Principle 1. Slow mind. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises of itself? Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching, verse 15. Have you noticed the incessant chatter in your mind? Of course you have. The inner voice that's been there for as long as you can remember. In this chapter, we officially introduce the two of you to one another and explore how you can live in harmony rather than chaos. The dialogue in the mind can be like having a noisy, inconsiderate roommate who plays loud music, has guests over without asking, and at times won't let you fall asleep. It's like, hey, I know you said you want to sleep, but remember what Carlos said to you in the meeting today? What a jerk, right? Oh, and don't forget about your taxes. I know they aren't due for another few months, but you should probably start worrying about them right now before falling asleep. Oh, and speaking of money, if the stock market crashes, you won't have any savings and you won't be able to quit your job and build up your own business, and you'll have to work and hang out with Carlos for eternity. Okay, sweet dreams. Wait a second, roommate of the mind, who invited you? It's time to slow all that noise in the mind way down. Our thoughts and the quantity of them can be steered in a slower, more conscious, more pleasant direction. That's what you'll learn in this chapter. Don't believe all the thoughts in your head, a teacher once told me. I want to take a moment to ask you to consider this. The thoughts in your head aren't the real you. They're not your identity. From a psychological standpoint, it's understood that thoughts can be influenced by a variety of factors, including your culture and family upbringing, social influences, personal experiences, and subconscious processes. Many thoughts can be seen as arising from the collective knowledge and experiences we've been exposed to, rather than being solely ours. Basically, when we overthink, our brains are just doing their weird and wonderful thing. We all know what it's like to have lightning-fast scripts running through our psyche, so most of us would agree that a lot of the time, our thoughts are neither authentic nor productive. At best, it's annoying to have a mind that races without our conscious consent. At worst, it can lead to extreme stress and other mental health issues. Stress, your modern-day inheritance. Stress has won the award for the most widely experienced buzzword of our time. It shows up everywhere, in magazines, on the radio, on the news channels, and all over social media. It can be found lingering in the doctor's room, at the office, and on your way home. If you're not stressed out right now, someone close to you probably is. You can rarely make it through a single day without stress creeping in with a surprise boo. But what is it exactly? Stress is a combo of emotional and physiological reactions that come about when an individual perceives a situation as either demanding or threatening. This leads to strain or doubt in their coping capabilities. This phenomenon constitutes a multifaceted psychosomatic response. In plain English, it's your brain's way of saying, quick, fight against the danger, or if you can't do that, flee and get away. In reality, however, what most circumstances call for is to slow down and get out of the stress state so that we can actually deal with the situation at hand. In our modern world, life has become ever more fast-paced and increasingly complex. Combine speed, pressure, and complexity, and boom, you've got a breeding ground for stress. Even with our advances in technology and modern environment, our bodies are still very primal, operating on the same cycles and rhythms as they have for hundreds of thousands of years. It's no wonder that balance is so difficult to achieve when we push ourselves in so many unnatural ways. We're just not built for doing 100 things at once. And we're certainly not built to be under the iron fist of stress over extended periods of time while trying to survive a concrete jungle. That's why it makes us so sick. More on that later. This lightning-fast lifestyle leaves millions too depleted to nourish themselves psychologically, get sufficient exercise, do relaxation practices, or even spend quality time with other human beings. We're wired for connection, yet our worldly responsibilities often get in the way of our spending time with the people who make our lives worth living. This energy-depleting way of life and chronic stress that comes with it can lead to a host of serious physical and psychological ailments. Cutting-edge medical research, as well as research dating back to the 1990s, estimated that up to 90% of serious illness and disease are brought about by stress. And let's face it, the number is probably higher now. Quick myth. Regular stress is an inevitable part of life, so toughen up. You should be able to handle it. Slow reality. Stress, when experienced chronically, is responsible for many serious illnesses. Bringing slowness to the mind and prioritizing your well-being will safeguard your brain and body, and therefore your life, against deterioration. Stress must be faced with a level of seriousness, just as physical illness are. Are you stressed? Stress is dangerous. At its worst, stress can be a cause of death for human beings. It doesn't get more serious than that. At a milder level, it causes premature aging and a host of preventable diseases. At best, stress causes immediate, very unpleasant feelings in the mind and body, and that's the kind of best you want to avoid. Here's a list of symptoms of stress. Identify any that you may have experienced in the past or that you're experiencing on a regular basis. Do you ever get any of these physical signs of stress in your body? Tight muscles and body aches, fatigue, shallow, short breathing, chest tightness, rapid pulse, heartburn, indigestion, diarrhea, constipation, dry mouth and throat, excessive sweating, cold hands and feet, skin irritation, lower libido, gut and stomach cramps, loss of appetite, insomnia, panic attacks, changes in your menstrual cycle if you have periods. Do you ever get any of these psychological signs of stress in your mind or mood? Intrusive and racing thoughts, frustration, irritability and anger, impatience and low tolerance, worry and anxiety, sadness and depression, tearfulness, insecurity, emotional instability, memory lapses, difficulty in concentrating, indecision, loss of sense of humor, loss of empathy and generosity, increased desire to consume alcohol and drugs, cravings for high sugar, high fat foods, lack of interest in life, feeling neglected or lonely. I'm willing to bet that you've experienced one, more, or many of these symptoms on a recurrent basis. Very few people get through life unscathed by stress. It's sad that this acute mental strain robs so many people of life's pleasures, and it's concerning that these symptoms have now become normal. According to the American Institute of Stress, 33% of people report suffering regularly from extreme stress. 48% of people can't sleep properly because of stress. 73% of people see major impacts on their mental health caused by stress. 77% of people experience stress that directly affects their physical health. And for varying reasons, the souls who suffer the most extreme levels of stress happen to be women, single parents, and ethnic minorities. Many of these physical and mental issues, it could be argued, arise not only from stress itself, but from the way we handle it. The steady rise of addictions, drug and alcohol use, unhealthy, abusive relationships, and choosing entertainment over a good night's sleep, name-dropping my guilty pleasure of choice that rhymes with VetFix, can't have helped the situation. And once we have a physical or mental illness, we may well choose to numb the pain with even more unhealthy choices, such as comfort eating, splurging, toxic, unfulfilling casual sex, drug use, and general reckless behavior. We respond to stress in detrimental ways because we lack resources. And going to the doctor's office about it, 9 times out of 10, will only get you a packet of Prozac or Valium thrown in your face, which opens a Pandora's box of side effects. I'm not saying that anxiety and depression shouldn't be treated with medication. However, I argue that these drugs shouldn't be used lightly and without trying more holistic approaches first or alongside them. The results are in. Stress is the most silent, subtle pandemic of the 21st century. Worse still, this form of suffering has been globally accepted as part and parcel of the everyday. But just because it's normal doesn't mean it should be. And just because you've already had your fair share of it doesn't mean you should live with the pain of stress long term. The good news is that you'll already be safeguarding yourself against a buildup of stress-related issues by practicing the slow method principles. Meditation, mindfulness, exercise, and healthy relating have been proven time and time again to reduce even the most extreme forms of stress. Contrary to what you might be feeling right now, because I've alarmed you, stress isn't all bad. It has one pretty useful benefit if relied upon in short-term, dramatic scenarios. The bear and the big silver lining of stress. Too much stress can be deadly, as we know, but experiencing absolutely none of it can be deadly too. The stress response evolved for a very good reason, to protect you from danger. I became all too familiar with this response early in my life. On my 13th birthday, my father took me to Alaska, a sort of initiation into manhood, an adventure into the wild. On our second day in the bush, we were hiking along a beautiful trail next to a river, watching the salmon jump upward toward the edge of the waterfall. As we stopped to admire the spectacular scene, a huge grizzly bear unexpectedly burst out of the bushes and trees and onto the trail, a mere 4 feet in front of us. The bear was twice as tall as I was. I froze. To this day, I remember how suddenly dry my mouth became and how dramatically hard my heart was beating. I'm sure the bear could see it drumming through my waders. At that precise moment, my body was basically giving me a choice. I could put up my dukes and have a wrestling match with my furry opponent, or I could find the quickest way to escape. This is known as fight or flight, ACTH, the adrenocorticotropic hormone, was released into my bloodstream, and my adrenal glands immediately went to work to produce a huge amount of adrenaline and cortisol. My blood pressure rose dramatically, and my breathing rate amplified rapidly. My lungs wanted as much oxygen as they could handle, so I could make a run for it if I chose to. My blood was then directed away from my skin and internal organs and sent to my brain and skeletal muscles. All of my muscles tensed up to make me temporarily stronger in case I chose to fight the bear. My blood cells rearranged their structuring so as to cause them to clot faster, just in case the bear actually caught me and tossed me around like a doll. This would, in turn, repair the near-fatal damage inflicted on my arteries as swiftly as possible. Simultaneously, my pupils dilated, temporarily gifting me with better vision. Not so necessary, as the 1,000-pound grizzly was just 4 feet away. My liver then converted my glycogen stores into glucose, which teamed up with all my free fatty acids to supply me with an immediate burst of energy to fuel the attack, or in this case, my getaway. In a nutshell, my well-justified stress response caused a lot to happen. The Alaskan fishermen of old and new always give the same advice. Do not run if you come face to face with a bear. But I was a kid, and I thought I was going to die. So before I knew it, my mind had gone completely blank, and my legs had sped off from under me like those of a roadrunner. My dad and I found ourselves sprinting down the trail and then scrambling up a tree faster than the local squirrels. Luckily for us, the bear was much more interested in the salmon jumping up the waterfall. We made that tree our home until the bear was well out of sight. Under these circumstances, the fight or flight response of my younger self was totally appropriate. This primal bodily reaction served the cave dwellers throughout the Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age, and it worked like a charm. In fact, it's seen us through every stage of the human evolution, and we still need this response just in case we happen to come face to face with a grizzly in our local national park, as my dad and I did. This reaction, however, should have to kick in only rarely, once in a blue moon for modern individuals living in the 21st century. Yet, as a modern man, I have experienced the exact same stress response from behind the wheel of my car and from behind my computer screen showing me an unpleasant email. Unfortunately, it seems that our bodies have not caught up with our environmental evolution. To our bodies, we're still living in the wild, and an office presentation is a lioness in disguise, just as much as our baby's cry is akin to the howl of a hungry wolf who's about to pounce through the open door of a cave. Our bodies do not know the difference between the perils of the natural world and the stress that our modern life brings with it as collateral damage. In today's modern jungle, things like public speaking, a disgruntled spouse, difficult clients, deadlines, debts to be paid, and child rearing, while not life-threatening, cause the same response as if they were. They release the same bombardment of stress hormones into the body. Our body isn't just reacting, it's overreacting. And repeatedly triggering this fight or flight response wears it down. The mind swiftly follows this breakdown as the pent-up stress has nowhere to go but deeper in. At least when a truly dangerous situation is at hand, the stress response has an outlet to express itself immediately. We either use up the energy to run for our lives or use every ounce of strength to fight our opponent. The stress hormones don't stay in our body, and our system calms down relatively quickly when it's all over. But when it comes to today's stressful scenarios, 9 out of 10 times, we suffer in stillness and in silence like caged tigers. The stress stays in our bodies and minds. Over time, this type of stress becomes chronic and eventually can make us sick. This all makes sense even to the most cynical of us when it comes to the mind-body connection. A machine that constantly runs on overdrive without resetting itself is bound to crash and burn out. Bottom line, keep your stress response only if you're face-to-face with a bear or an oncoming truck on the road you're crossing or a violent thief on the street corner. It'll save you. But it's high time to ditch it in all other areas of your life when it becomes chronic. Where do you start? First aid. Exercise number 1, first aid for stress. Primal shaking. The first need is for first aid. It's all well and good telling you to sit down and meditate, and trust me, I will. But if stress has already set in, wreaking havoc on your body, you need an immediate physical outlet for it. Just like zebras, polar bears, dogs, cats, and the myriad of other animals all discharge their stress response by shaking. And shaking is not just for our furry friends. You'll see athletes, performers, and Olympians shake before an event. Shaking transforms stress into vitality, tightness and tension into peak performance. Peak performance should be for all of us. If you want to bring your best energy forward into your everyday life, do some shaking. Take a moment to pause and notice any stress in your body. Where are you feeling it? What symptoms are you experiencing? If you're not stressed right now, good for you, by the way, imagine if someone asked you, where do you usually carry stress in your body? Where would you point? Once you've clarified the area, whether it's your stomach, throat, jaw, head, neck and shoulders, or anywhere else in the body, you're ready to go. Take a deep breath, and as you exhale, imagine blowing out the tension the stress has caused. Take another deep breath. This time, on the exhale, begin shaking your entire body. Bounce into your legs, relax your shoulders, pump your hands by releasing and relaxing your wrists, release the back of the head, the cranial base, and allow that shaking to move through your spine. In Qi Gong, this is called activating the 5 pumps. Do this for 2 to 5 minutes. You may feel a little silly at first, but this exercise is anything but stupid. You're giving your body, the primal animal beneath your skin, permission to shake off excess stress that you no longer need. Do whatever you need to do to get into the mood. Use your mind to bring forth a stressful situation so that you can shake the poison out. Sigh loudly. Put on some dance music if you like and let it all out. Keep breathing and shaking as strongly as you feel until the stress leaves your body. Now stand or sit still and return to your breath. Return to slowness. Return to your center. Sense a light buzzing or tingling in your hands and fingers. Feel warmth and relaxation moving through your spine and nervous system. Practice slow breathing. Soak up the relaxation. Soak up the new, clean, clear Qi. Mindfulness, the #1 enemy of stress. Now that you know how to perform shaky first aid on yourself once the stress has struck, it's time to learn some prevention techniques. It's time to cultivate that kryptonite of your stress. It's time to open up a big old can of mindfulness. Mindfulness happens to be a very popular buzzword, just like stress. But this one is widely misunderstood. To begin with, mindfulness is the opposite of mindfulness, with a double L. You don't need me to tell you what it's like to have your mind full of doubts, worry, overwhelm, critical thoughts, fantasies about the future, and painful memories from the past. It's how the mind naturally rolls. So don't be too hard on yourself if you currently have a mind that's in overdrive, aka the monkey mind. We're hardwired to think on overdrive because, quite simply, it's how the human race survived for so long. The saber-toothed tiger had its, you guessed it, teeth. So did the shark, as it still strikes fear into the fishy hearts of millions today. The mammoth had its size and strength. The primordial rodents had their smallness and their scrappiness and could dive into tiny holes to shelter them from natural catastrophes. Sapiens had, for as long as we can tell, the mind. And Homo sapiens, that's us, triumphed over the Neanderthals, another type of prehistoric human being, for this reason: we were smarter. We could use the mind to predict future scenarios by remembering past circumstances. That was our savior. We used our brilliant minds to plan, strategize, count, connect, and avoid danger in advance. We were problem-solving machines, and no other creature on the planet could say the same for itself. You could say that if nothing else, we had big brain energy, and we used it to win at life and the game of evolution. It was all about survival of the fittest, and we were as fit as we could be. Because survival was the goal, our minds adapted to ensure that it happened. But nowadays, our main goal in life has changed. We want more than just to survive. We want to thrive. We now, deep in our hearts, want happiness in life. We want to experience and give love. We want to live in a state of peace and balance. We want to make the world a better place. And that's great. The only problem is the untrained mind will struggle to get there due to its primal programming and its infestation of ants. Ants, automatic negative thoughts, produce a constant, subtle undercurrent of anxiety. If we remain in this state long term, this subtle anxiety will begin to flare up into stress when triggered by whichever stimulus happens to crop up. And if we stay stressed, it will eventually cause all the nasty symptoms that we outlined earlier. To prevent stress from rearing its head in the first place, we must turn to the arch nemesis of mental disorder, which is mindfulness. Simple, yet so effective, mindfulness is the art of paying attention. It consists of slowing down the thinking mind and connecting to the present moment, the only moment we can possibly find happiness in. But the consequences of engaging in this practice are astronomically beneficial to our mental health. Mindfulness is not for the few. Mindfulness is for the masses, and we need it now more than ever. What does a mindful person look like? Well, for starters, you don't have to be from the Buddhist territories of Asia, where mindfulness has its original roots. You don't have to wear robes or continually exude an expression of peace. A mindful person is simply one who is actually here and now. They live their actual lives, not the ones that exist solely in their heads. As a result, anxiety and stress are not commonplace. But it's an art to master. The mind is hardwired to overthink, to avoid pain and pursue pleasure, and therefore to be preoccupied with worry about what might happen or why something already did. This is quite the opposite of mindfulness. So how do we practice mindfulness from a place of chaos? This has been a timeless inquiry of the mystics of Eastern traditions of meditation as well as Western psychologists, and that's what you'll learn in this chapter. Switch on your kettle. Things are about to get hot. Quick myth. The goal of life, just as it was thousands of years ago, is to survive. It's survival of the fittest, and stress will help us triumph. Slow reality. While survival is still incredibly important, it is not the goal of life. As an evolved species, we have a new goal: to thrive. And chronic stress holds us back from health, happiness, and bliss.